Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm an academic demographer, and what I want to do now in these few minutes is step back a little and discuss what is the topic that we are getting so excited about here. It's the demographic emergency, how it's called. Well, let's leave aside the question of whether or not it's justified to talk about an emergency. I'd like to focus what we mean by the word demographic. I've recently published a book called Advanced Introduction to Demography. And for this, I've gone through many definitions that have been given of what demography actually means. What is demography addressing? And one of the oldest and most widely spread, and actually my favorite definition, says demography is the scientific study of changing population size and structures. But mind, it's structures in the plural. It's not just the age structure. It is multiple structures. Well, then if you ask what are the demographic structures that we should be worrying about, well, the textbooks again give you reference to the typical characteristics of people as they are collected in censuses or in surveys. You have the demographics there, which is first of all place of residence. Then it is age and year of birth, clearly. It is the sex. It is also educational attainment. It is labor force participation. In some countries, it's race or ethnicity or language used. So these are all demographic characteristics, demographic dimensions, as I like to call them. Well, how do we analyze them? Gunnar Andersen this morning has introduced you nicely to the age pyramid. And you see here two such pyramids for Greece for the year 2020 and for the year 2060. But Gunnar's pyramids had only one color. In a way, the implicit assumption, as much of demography does it, that everybody in a given age group, let's say all women aged 20 to 25, are homogeneous. What we see here is we actually have 6 colors here. So green means in the labor force, and brown means not in the labor force. So this is the third dimension, and the fourth dimension is the educational attainment. Always the dark color means high education, then the medium is intermediate education, and the light color means low education. So you see today in Greece, well, certainly not everybody between the ages 15 and 65 is working, as this misguided notion of working age population seems to imply. Many people below the age of 65 are not working, as you see with the brown area here. And you also see that the more educated people tend to work more to a higher degree than the less educated, and they work longer than the less educated. And you also see a cohort difference. Young women in Greece are much more likely to be part of the labor force. You see the green area spreads almost the whole female side, whereas women already above the age of 45, 50, many of them are housewives, many of them are not in the labor force. So this really shows a much more relevant and a much more differentiated picture of what are the demographic realities. And then on the right-hand side, you see a projection of the same 6 characteristics to the year 2060. It's a status quo projection. It assumes almost no migration, and we assume that sort of the age-specific probabilities or the cohort-specific probability of working and getting education are the same as we observe them today. And you see, of course, the population in the year 2060 is on average a lot older. You see the biggest age groups actually are women in their 70s. But you also see these women in the future, these elderly women, are much better educated. And although they are out of the labor force, this has many positive consequences, such as better health status. I mean, typically, if we only look at age, we observe elderly people have higher disabilities. But we also see very clearly from the data that, let's say, 70-year-old women, if they have university education, their probability of having disabilities or having Alzheimer or some of these old age diseases is less than half that of the same 70-year-old woman who has low education. So education protects you from the onset of disabilities, and therefore the fact that the future elderly are better educated is also very good for the health of the future population. And I think some of these projections that are merely age-based are far too pessimistic. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. If you can move that on, or I can do it. Okay, here. In demography, we like to play with what we call dependency ratios. And the one that you see on top is this rather misleading and unfortunately widely used old age dependency ratio. It just shows you how many people there are. Well, it's also total dependency below the age of 14 and above the age of 65 to people in the so-called working ages of 15 to 64. And that indeed increases by 80%. This is standardized to 1. Why is it unfortunate and why is it misleading? Well, I just showed you because not everybody in the age bracket 15 to 64 is working. We have a much more accurate picture if we look at actual labor force dependency. So these are the people who are inactive, who are not part of the labor force, divided by those who are active. And you see that is increasing much less steeply. It's still increasing, but much less steeply. And then we know for sure that the more educated people are also more productive. So if we have the productivity-weighted labor force dependency ratio that factors in that these more educated people in the future will move up the age pyramid and be more productive, still we have a lower increase in dependency. As I said, initially this does not factor in education. We have done scenarios for all European countries that show if you have immigration, particularly immigration of highly educated people, these increases can be still flatter, and the right mix of increasing labor force participation, increasing in education of the domestic population, and having selective, highly educated immigration really can lead to a flat line, no increase of the demographic dependency. So this really offers a big spectrum of policies for managing what I sometimes call population policies should be viewed as national level human resource policies. There are many people from the corporate sector here. Every big company has a human resource policy. Manage your staff well, try to continue their education and motivate them. And the same needs to be done at the national level to manage and motivate our human resources that we have. Thank you.